And for more, Southeast Asia correspondent Zoe Daniel joins us now from Bangkok. Zoe, why did Ms Suu Kyi and the NLD renege, or back down rather, on this issue of the wording of the oath?
Oh, look, in the end I think someone had to, and I think the government to some degree was digging in on this. I spoke with one government spokesman who said, well, we changed the registration rules to make it easier for them to register as a political party, but in this case it would have to be voted on by the parliament to make the change. And perhaps the National League for Democracy in the end decided that for the sake of pragmatism and for the sake of the reform process generally that it would backflip. But you're right, it's an unusual step, particularly from Aung San Suu Kyi, who's known for being very strong-minded and doesn't really usually compromise on these sorts of issues. But in the end, she obviously decided that getting into the parliament for the sake of the voters who put them there was the most important thing.
I suppose in many ways this was a relatively minor issue compared to the milestone that this is, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely, and I think that point was raised that, you know, there are many much more complex reforms that are ahead, and changing that one word in the oath, while it may have been a matter of principle, probably wouldn't have changed much. I mean, what we're going to see now is attempts by the opposition, for example, to change the constitution to achieve the rule of law, as they put it, so to achieve judicial reform. And these are much more difficult things that they'll have to try to push through the parliament, and that'll be quite hard for them initially when they only have 8% of the lower house. Realistically, I think their entry to the parliament, while significant, will be somewhat symbolic until we see a general election around 2015, when they may be able to actually take a majority of the parliament to make some big changes.
So you've just returned from Burma. How does the public feel about this move, the NLD's move from activism and dissidence to politics and a much more delicate diplomatic situation?
Well, I think what's happened is nothing more than what the public would have always expected. I mean, as you know, the NLD and Aung San Suu Kyi took a landslide victory in 1990 and were never able to take power. Aung San Suu Kyi then spent 15 years under house arrest. So to some degree, the public feels that they're simply getting what they already had, and that is seats in the parliament. I do think, though, that the level of understanding is low about what it will take for what is effectively a pressure group, a dissident group, a pro-democracy group to become a political party, and the complexity involved in that. Beyond, we want democracy, we want constitutional change, we want political prisoners released. Well, what comes next? I mean, we know how much legal reform there's going to have to be, how much structural change, how much economic reform to truly bring Burma to present day, let alone take it into the future. And they're all the things that Aung San Suu Kyi and her NLD will have to grapple with now.
Zoe, do you have any insight as to how the NLD is going to try to steer the agenda, given that their numbers in the parliament are relatively small?
Look, I think Aung San Suu Kyi will use her profile to some extent initially, and I think that the government will want to be seen to be allowing some of their reforms to go through as part of its appearance of following a reform process. But I think it's when we get to those big ticket items, for example, changing the constitution and removing the military from the parliament. At the moment, the constitution dictates that the parliament is 25% military members. You can imagine the sort of fireworks that might erupt in the parliament when they start debating that issue, given what we've seen over one word in the parliamentary oath. I mean, that's when we'll really see some interesting and complex debate, and you know, realistically, progress may slow down as they debate some of those complex issues. But, you know, Aung San Suu Kyi, again, pragmatically, she's obviously decided by running for parliament, by taking a seat in the parliament, and by engaging with the government, that she's going to try and work now from the inside rather than the outside. And this is a huge change for both sides of politics.
All right, Zoe Daniel reporting from Bangkok.